Hello, back rubbers. It's lovely to be here as your supply teacher today, and a big thank you to Nick for giving us the opportunity to come in and share a little bit about what we do in our businesses and the opportunity to actually come in and do it in this format and put ourselves out there a little bit. And for me, visibility is something that has been high on my agenda to be working on. So this is a lovely opportunity to practice that a little bit as well. So this is the first of 4 posts that I'm going to be posting today. And this video is really about me getting you to see me, talk a little bit about my business, what I do, what got me into it, a little bit of my story really. And what I'd then like to do in the next 3 posts today is to share a little bit of the work that I do, and hopefully for some of you that can maybe relate to one of the aspects of work that I do around diet culture and our weight and our relationship to our weight, you might find this quite helpful. So the next 3 posts are going to be focusing on 3 key areas that I work with my clients, and I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this video. So just want to start with a bit of an introduction really. You know, I'm Hayley Perkins, and I left my corporate career back in 2004, and as with many therapists, it's often as a result of our own therapy that we decide to retrain, and I'm no different. So back in 2004 I left the corporate world and I started on my counsellor training journey. So I set up my face-to-face practice almost 18 years ago. I can't really quite believe that really. So I've had a face-to-face practice for almost 18 years, and in the last 18 years I've trained in many different modalities. I studied at the Burn Institute in Kegworth, where I studied transactional analysis psychotherapy. I've done my NLP practitioner, lots and lots of different little courses. I've done many courses around depression. So predominantly in my face-to-face practice I work with all aspects of mental health, but also mental well-being. I'm a very big advocate for talking therapies. Quite often the clients that I'm working with just don't have that person where they can be completely open and honest, and that in itself can be hugely therapeutic. And I think for us as business owners, especially in the world of growing our businesses online, it can be quite lonely, and we don't always have people that we can be very open and honest with. And I feel very lucky that I have my own therapist, but I also have supervision where I have multiple places where I can go and really talk about what's going on for me, what's going on for my clients. So talking therapy is so powerful, but I also know how important it is to be able to move people through whatever they're going through. And that's where I am a trained counsellor, but I'm also a therapist, and I have a number of modalities that I use to help move people through to the place that they want to get to. So a big part of my work that I do is around disordered eating. I've had a really dysfunctional relationship with food for as long as I can remember. You know, I look back through photos and, although my mum put me on my first diet when I was 14, my weight and my relationship to my body started way before that. So I've had a really challenging relationship with food. And if I fast forward, like from childhood, if we go back to 1997, I left a very dysfunctional relationship, a relationship I'd gone into a size 12 and come out a size 24. I won't go into the detail of that, but I left that relationship, my weight at the highest and my self-worth at the lowest. And I did the typical thinking and blaming my weight. That was the reason why my relationship failed. So I spent the next 5 years trying to sort my weight out. And I did. I lost 8 stone. It took me 5 years. And, I pulled on that elusive size 10 pair of jeans and kind of thought, that's it. I've arrived. I prayed at that altar of thinness for so many years. But actually the reality was my insecurities were far worse than ever. This perception that I had that everything would be great when I was thinner actually didn't work out like that for me. And that was when I went into therapy, and that was when I started to really unravel and unpick my relationship with food, my relationship with me, started to explore some of my childhood trauma. And it was through my own journey that I wanted to help other people that were stuck in that place where they were stuck in diet culture, where they believed that their weight was their problem, and just spent year after year on that exhausting yo-yo dieting trend. So come forward to present day, and you know, I run and this is what I want to kind of talk to you about. This is the part of my business I want to share with you today. I run a program called If Diets Don't Work, What Does? And I'm so passionate about helping women and men to get off that dieting culture cycle, because our food relationship is really complex. And for me, what I established through my own therapy was my weight. I was nearly 19 stone at my heaviest, and you know, I was disgusted by that. You know, society is disgusted by that. So I felt huge amounts of guilt and shame, to the point that I wouldn't go out. If I did go out, I'd have to be pissed, or I went through a spell of taking Class A drugs, which all helped me to feel okay in my environment. So I've abused my body in lots and lots of ways over the years. And you know, when you actually start to dig beneath the surface and start to understand what's behind that, that's when you can start to understand those coping mechanisms that we have in place. So over the years, I've developed If Diets Don't Work, What Does? And you know, our food relationship is complex, and it isn't just about what we're eating, albeit that is part of it. You know, diet culture massively plays a part in terms of this cycle that we keep going round, and I want to talk more about that in the next post. So habits also form a part, but a big part of it is also our emotional attachment to food. You know, we live in a world where there's such an abundance of food, and yet we're constantly trying to create this fast. Like, you know, we look back to the cavemen, and they would eat when food was around and not eat when it wasn't, and that was kind of how it was. And we're trying to recreate that all of the time, which goes against how our brain chemistry works. You know, so we're trying to constantly create a restriction in a world of abundance, and that makes it really hard, especially if you've got an emotional attachment to food as well. You know, we're not just physical beings, and quite often we approach our weight and weight loss from a very physical perspective, whereas, you know, when we start taking food away, it's literally, like for most of us, like taking a dummy off a baby, and it creates such an emotional disturbance for us. But of course, what happens is when we do what actually we're naturally driven to do, and that is to eat, we then kick off that guilt and shame cycle. So it's really complicated, you know, and I've had a very turbulent road to recovery. And you know, a big part of the guilt and shame is that we often, and this is when I first start working with clients, they're so caught in that world of believing that if they lose weight, that life is going to be so much better, even though there's another level of them that actually knows that's not necessarily the case. So I know predominantly this group is kind of like a business group, but actually, you know, we can learn all the business skills, can't we? But if we haven't got if we haven't got our mental health and our emotional health in a good place, then that's always going to get in the way of us running our businesses. And I know for me, my weight and all that encompasses, my self-worth, my body image, massively influenced how I showed up in my business. So as I've started to, yes, grow skills to grow my business, but also start to work on how I see myself, because that has been a real stumbling block for me and my visibility. So that's why I chose to come and sort of share this aspect of my business with you today. So what I'm going to be talking about over the next couple of posts, and there's going to be an invitation to do a couple of little exercises, especially if you can relate to, especially if you've had a dysfunctional relationship with food. So like I say, I work with disordered eating, but more on the overeating and the overweight camp, not so much the anorexia and bulimia, albeit I do work one-to-one with people who have those challenges. But a big part of my work is around the overeating, the diet culture, the habits that we get stuck in, the emotional attachment to food, and how that plays out in our lives. So that's what I want to come and talk to you a little bit more about today. And over the next 3 posts, the next post is going to be about diet culture, and that in itself is a massive topic. And obviously, you know, this is just a snippet of the work that I do that I want to share with you today. But I'd like to get you thinking about food rules. You know, that good and bad food list is just a part of like those food rules. So the first post today, I'm going to talk a little bit about food rules, and you're going to be invited to answer some questions to get you just starting to think about your own food rules. And this isn't just for people who might be carrying extra weight or have been stuck in that dieting cycle. This is for anyone. You know, I've worked with people who are stone overweight to 15 stone overweight, and it's really interesting how many of us have these similar food rules that we live our lives by, and some of them are there and they're great to have those boundaries, but often it's some of these really subtle food rules that create and drive a very unhealthy relationship with food. So that's post number 1 that we're going to have a little look at today. Then post number 2. Post number 3 is going to be a little bit about habits. I'm going to talk about the habit loop and get you thinking about some of the food habits you've got, but also some of the non-food habits that you've got that might be actually leading into overeating. So that's quite an important one to sort of take a look at as well. And then the last post I'm going to do today is around emotional attachment to food. And we're only going to look at this on a very surface level, you know, because I don't want to dig too deeply in these little snippets. But we're going to talk about emotional triggers, and I'm going to talk to you about something called the emotional chain of events. And it's like that sequence of thoughts and feelings that often lead to the overeating. So that's kind of what I want to come and share with you today, guys. And hopefully you're going to get some value from that. And certainly, if anything comes up for you as you're doing some of this work, then come and have a chat, come and reach out. I will pop the link to my If Diets Don't Work, What Does group in the comments below this video. And if anyone kind of wants to come into my world and see how I work on a deeper level, then it would be lovely to have you as part of that group. So, diet culture and food rules will be coming at you at 10 o'clock.